Welcome friends for today's talk by Anveshan. This is the fifth online talk in the times of COVID pandemic that we've organized on behalf of Anveshan. The topic for today's panel discussion is online teaching in the times of COVID-19, the challenges and struggles ahead. We have amongst us four speakers or discussants. Uh, Abha Dev Habib, who teaches at Miranda
Hello.
House, and welcome, Abha. Yeah, and we have Disha Nawani, who teaches at the School of Education, FIS.
Hi,
Welcome, Disha.
thank you.
We have Dhananjay, who teaches at Central University of Gujarat. Welcome. And we have Swati, who teaches at the University of Calcutta.
Hi. Hi, Rityusha.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Swati.
Hi.
So thank you for joining us. The way we've decided to go ahead with this panel discussion is that we open it up for the four of you one by one. So while one speaker is speaking, I would request that the others just mute their device. And each of you get around 10 to 12 minutes to give a pitch about the online teaching way you see it in these difficult times that we are in. And after the four of you have spoken for around 10 to 12 minutes, I will open up with certain questions from my side. So I will request Abha to go first. And Abha, you have around 10 minutes from now onwards.
Hi everyone, and on this platform I can only share our experiences, and we are not experts on online teaching or anything. We have been thrown into this situation because of COVID-19, and I can only say that in universities, circular came from MHRD to go for teaching online. And soon universities started sending it to colleges and Delhi University and so on and so forth. However, the institutional help and the structure was completely missing. For example, in Miranda House, there have been many more meetings of the college and of each department, and we have been able to discuss these things, new things which we are supposed to do. And we were able to implement some of these. But in many colleges and in many departments, the institutional framework was completely missing. Also, what is missing is that the MHRD and therefore, institutional heads never wrote to the students that they need to respond to the situation or what is their condition. And there was no survey. In fact, I am very surprised that only Hyderabad University, Central University of Hyderabad, has conducted a survey among students to see the penetration of the online teaching which we are doing. But bigger universities like Delhi University, colleges and the university should have conducted survey by now to understand the penetration of the work which we are doing and what are the problems at the end of the students and how we can address those questions. And no survey has been conducted among students. I will share the survey which I conducted with my own students. My own personal experience has been the following. One is that the regularity in classrooms have just decreased, in the sense that most of us, because this circular for online teaching came, we started sharing first our notes, and we soon found out that many teachers have taken to Zoom. So we also thought that we will also go on to Zoom. Now, many humanities, social science subjects, the teachers are used to looking at students and holding discussions, and therefore they did not find that giving notes will help the students. They wanted Zoom sessions. And soon, I teach physics at Miranda House. We also thought that we will also go for Zoom session. I want to tell that only 1/4 of my class, I have one class of 46 students, another class of 40. At any Zoom session, only 10 to 12 students were able to attend the Zoom session. And I will show my survey. Most of the students said that their connectivity has been very bad. they are not able to join. They say that they either don't have laptops or they had gone home for a short semester, mid-semester break. In Delhi University, the mid-semester break was from 8th March to 16th March. And as such, students were never, they went for 3 days thinking Holi hai, जाएंगे और वापस आ जाएंगे, अपनी किताबें, अपना लैपटॉप यहीं पे छोड़ गए. Now, I mean, they do not have material for the topics which we had covered from before mid-semester break. Also, they are forced to look at the small screen, whether it is about reading the material which we provide them online. And in Miranda House, I will say that we had a portal through which we, in a very uniform manner, provided material to our students. And our material was only going to our students. So we were very comfortable in providing that material. Whether it was readings of some books or some PDF from the book or my own notes, I was able to provide. But they say that we are forced to look at small screens and it becomes very difficult. So even joining Zoom session has become very difficult. And many students said that the environment at home is not conducive for us to join these Zoom sessions. We need to understand that, central universities cater to a very diverse student population. And approximately 60% of students come from marginalized sections through reservations, SC, ST, OBC, and now EWS. And many more come from other such backgrounds, even if they cannot, they do not really come through these lists, but they are coming from economically marginalized or not so well-to-do families or whatever. So they are living in very cramped rooms and whatever. And when the girls are at home, they have to work a lot at home also. So a large number of students are missing on Zoom sessions also. As a physics teacher, I will also say that one of the thing which has hit everywhere in all universities is the practical labs. We are not able to really compensate for practical labs. A couple of teachers did try virtual lab, but as I've said, that students are not coming to the Zoom session. So the disparity between students is just increasing. Those who are able to join because they have some comfort in joining or they have connectivity, they come from there. And the issue of connectivity is across class, caste, and region. You have to understand that your students from Jammu and Kashmir cannot join, even if they have laptops at home. There is no connectivity. So many students are coming from places where they cannot connect. So we said that virtual experiments do not give a flavor of real experiments, and anyway this means that many more will lose out. So experiments is something which across science departments we have not been really able to compensate. One more thing which I want to say is that my experience is that it is a one-way traffic. I'm giving them notes, I'm on Zoom session. Now, in order to cut down on their data, most of the students keep their audio and video both off. Okay, that we have to keep audio off, we learned hard way because there was too much noise in the classroom session otherwise. But video off means that I'm just talking to a screen and I do not have expressions of my student. Whereas I think I always saw my profession as also a way where we perform in a class. So I look at faces, and if I see an unhappy face, I know that I have to address that student, that I have to repeat my argument, and I have to satisfy and bring them to a place where they are comfortable. And therefore, my experience has been that, the online teaching thing has not really taken to them teaching learning in the manner in which a classroom, it can never replace the classroom thing. The other thing is that classrooms provide a more democratic spaces, more equal spaces for students. And if we take classes to their home, then the homes enter the classroom. And therefore, they are not able to perform in the manner in which they perform in a classroom. But I am doing all this, and in the sense that I have given them notes and I've done Zoom session. And in order to help those students who can't join a Zoom right now, I've also recorded sessions. Now, I'm a science teacher, and my comfort level in recording Zoom sessions, if you are a maths teacher, science teacher, is much more. Okay, but if you are a social scientist, you may not feel comfortable in recording your Zoom session and sharing it with your students with the fear of the kind of government right now we have. So I think that our responses are also controlled by the fact that we do not believe in the intentions of the government. And therefore, when the UGC committee said that now teachers will have to prepare so that 25% course can be completed through online, I want to ask a question, why this should happen in normal times? Yes, institutions should remain prepared. We need to create portals. We need to provide platforms through which students and teachers can interact even through during vacation period and all this. But to say that 25% course has to be completed through online, then you do not know that first you have to provide. It is not my training which will help students. It is providing them laptops, netbook, internet facility which will help. Teachers here right now have used their own data, their own connectivity, but network, whatever they had. It is not that the institution was able to help them. Okay, and I do not want to really talk about help the institution need to provide to their teachers, because I had a very bad experience there also. In Miranda House at one point, student fee was increased to provide netbooks to teachers. Now that is not the kind of help I'm talking about. When I'm talking about institutional help, this means that COVID-19, if this pandemic doesn't give us the understanding that much more money has to be invested in education and in public health, then I think we are missing the point. The whole point is that those countries where governments have invested much more in education or invested much more in public health care are better equipped to respond to the pandemic. And I think that is very necessary. I want to say two things beyond online teaching. I see that my students, I teach at Miranda House many, and so therefore there are these girl students. I see that many families have had, right now are going through economic crisis. And I do not know whether these girls will come back to education ever again. Okay, whether their parents will be in a position to send them back to Delhi or to any other state for any other education. Immediately, state universities need to be strengthened. Immediately, scholarships have to be announced if we want families to send their children for education. I think this is very, very crucial. And when we start talking about this welfare, this thing which education needs right away, this promise from the government which education sector needs right away, then I think soon we will be the reality will be that we will be faced with fund cut. And this means that
The
hi,
audio is
sorry, the connection
unreachable.
broke. Are you able to hear me, Rityusha? Is it fine?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that it is very important that students and teachers and parents come together to demand a greater investment in public healthcare system and in education sector. And otherwise the solutions, as far as you know, our responses will also change. We have to face only few months lockdown, then I can forget it as a bad dream. But what will happen if this, because of the two things I want, one more question which I want to flag is the following, that right now the government, I mean, just as what has happened to migrant workers, we have seen that we entered a lockdown without really any preparation and we had a crisis in the entire country. And these responses of the MHRD and UGC are also like short-term kind of thing. Right now, what is also important is to think in a long-term thing. Are we really going to open school and colleges even in a September or October? And suppose we say that it has to be a longer lockdown, then we need to prepare ourselves. I think more than only education, a formal education, we need to look at the role the universities and educational institutions should play if the lockdown continues for, say, 6 months or a year. What will happen? The youth has to be engaged, kept engaged. And if we leave this space, I'm sorry to say, I have an understanding that if we leave the space, if we vacate that space, it is going to fall in the hands of WhatsApp University. Every day WhatsApps reach so many, and all kind of superstitions, all kind of fake news reach people. And if we vacate this space, I think that will be a dangerous thing also. So there are many questions. I don't have solution. I can only share my experience, and a little later when others have spoken, I will share the feedback I have collected from my own students to see their preparedness for exam, and whatever I'm doing, how much is making sense to them. That I will do little later. Thanks.
Rityusha, I think your audio is gone. Yeah, I think her audio is gone. So I'd invite Disha to speak now. Wait, I'll just unmute your audio, Disha. Just a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll try and conceptualize the problem a bit, and I'll give you more examples from the school education context because that's the area in which I work. So we've got a tendency to look at social reality in terms of binaries. We are looking for either or kind of solutions, and that's the context in which this online versus offline learning is also kind of placed. So looking at solutions in terms of bipolar opposites and mutually dichotomous categories. So either or kind of a solution you look for. So we have a traditional face-to-face kind of a classroom. Now that's not working. So we have an online kind of a classroom. We have a boring, dull classroom. We have a joyous classroom. We have conventional pedagogy. We have progressive pedagogy. We have a child-centered classroom versus a teacher-centered classroom. So if you look at education sector, and if you look at problems, solutions, or policies, they're often pitched in a manner that they sort of come across as opposites, as substitutes or alternatives to what is existing earlier. And this is a huge problem, according to me, for two reasons mainly. One is this approach reduces the meaning of learning to delivering of information. So if you're looking at education system, so right now what is being talked about is the question of access, that children can't access schools, they can't be traveling, they can't be going to schools and sitting in large numbers together, huddled together because there is a problem. So it takes care of, so how are you looking at the online solution? It takes care of the problem of access. So you, wherever you are, you stay wherever you are, and we will provide you access to certain information. In fact, when most people talk about online learning or digital learning, they keep saying, yeah, everyone has a phone these days, and so what's the issue? Wherever they could be traveling, they could be in the bus, they could be in a restaurant, they have access to information. And this to me is a very problematic approach, because this is a very narrow approach where you're looking at education in terms of delivering information or snippets of information or pieces of information, where you think that children will make sense of all that, and or frankly not really concerned about whether students will make sense of that. So one part is the delivering information. Second is, we must remember the technology by itself, it has inherent strengths and weaknesses, But by itself, it doesn't act. Like if you're using it in the context of a school or a college or a university, somebody is using it to achieve a certain objective. And that is most important. So how the technology is being used, I think, is more important. And for that, again, there are three aspects of which the person must have a sense of the agency which is using technology towards a certain end. One is what is the objective of education? So what, according to you, is the objective of education? Is it like a Freudian banking concept of education where you dump information, or are you allowing children to make sense of what's happening in the classroom? So what is the larger vision? What are the aims, objectives of education? What is one trying to do in such spaces? One is that if you don't have a sense of what you're trying to do, then you will randomly use technology to whatever your understanding is, kind of tells you. Second is again, relationship between curriculum. So what is worthwhile knowledge? What is the meaning of pedagogy? How do you sort of how do you not transmit information or knowledge? How do you engage? How do you sort of create a classroom in which there's learning happening, there's teaching, learning, which is a very dynamic process, and also again assessment. So how are you assessing students' learning? Is it like a quiz kind of a thing where you're trying to get a sense of what they've learned, what they've the kind of your aspiring for objectivity, neutrality, that kind of a thing. And are you using what they've learned as assessment? Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. And the other thing is assessing assessment to make sense of where children are, how much they've learned, what they've understood, and to help them and support them. So unless you have a sense of all this, you can't really achieve much. So for instance, some years back, I was doing some research in a school where I was trying to see how children are being taught, and it was a private school, and there were huge numbers sitting in the classrooms, almost 70 students, and they were all jostling for space, very huddled together. And the teacher was right in front, where she was on a platform, and she was like using a mic to speak to the children. Obviously, it was a very dull, oppressive, conventional kind of a classroom. And then they had an audiovisual room. So my researcher was to go there. He said, "Ma'am, that's like really working well, and it's a wonderful class, wonderful audiovisual room, and everything in place." So when I went to the class, to the school, and saw both the classroom, I sat there for a couple of hours, and the audiovisual room. The audiovisual room obviously was very exciting. It was air conditioned. It was like the seating arrangement was good. But what they had done is they had given the text, the school had given the textbooks to an online agency where they were digitizing all the textbook content, and it was really random. So if you say that the children are engaged, so the audio would say that A for apple, B for boy, C for whatever, cat, and you never you say that it's participatory, but it's obviously not, because if you don't answer, then the machine will automatically speak, and the context is totally random. You'll show a white child, a house which you've never seen before, jumping from one concept to another. So it was a really bad use of technology. So initially, when one would look at children engaged, they're not, but then they started getting terribly bored. And it's a very poor translation of what you understand by digital technology. So when I'm saying that you're talking of digital technology, you need to have a sense of what learning means, what curriculum means, what is the agency of the child, the teacher, and how do you make sense of a context, are you talking of perspective building? Are you talking of multiple perspectives? Or are you talking only of sharing in giving information? So that's the context, that's the way in which, and to my mind, most people, I would not say all, and I'm not saying that I want to see it as either or categories, but for sure, when most people talk about technology and they talk about WhatsApp, which Abha just spoke about, the idea is that, yeah, information is accessible to you everywhere. You can only access information, but that is obviously neither learning nor education, nor do we want that. You're talking of creating a democratic space in the classroom, egalitarian democratic space, then obviously that's not going to work. And the third is that you must also have an understanding of the social contexts which children come from. So there is economic capital. So Abha again talked about the availability of a laptop or a computer, or even space to conduct a classroom peacefully, or to listen to somebody. And there is this cultural capital, like, ease with the machine and how to use it. So my main concern always has been, with a lot of other issues, that if you're looking at solutions as either or category, then there is going to be a problem, because there are no either or categories. There is a range, there is a continuum, there are certain principles which one needs to make sense of. For instance, the pupil-teacher ratio, the large number of students, either in a traditional classroom or in an online platform, it's going to be problematic. Or if you're not allowing children to students to speak, or if you're not taking their perspective, you're just dumping information. So either, if you look at, and quite a few people are quite excited about the online learning these days, and they say this is a solution and we found a solution and this is really going to work and this is going to take care of a lot of problems. It may not, it may not, but we need to be very careful about how we are constructing it, how we are using it, how we are sort of, how we are looking at children, students, teachers, and so on and so forth. And so that's the way I would like to look at this whole binary, which is, I think, an artificial binary. And if you go by binaries, then they do give you a critical lens to understand social reality, which is a good thing. So they're like more ideal types. But if you believe in those binaries and you fall in the trap of believing in either or, then there is a problem, because reality is far more complex. And in this context, I think the most dangerous implication of technology is when we think that it can substitute a teacher. And this, I'm speaking from the context of a school system where children who are most disadvantaged and underprivileged, you're using technology for them and not the teacher. Then that's the whole understanding is hugely problematic, because they'd much rather. Now, this again doesn't mean that the teacher is all good, conventional classroom is all good. I'm not saying that. But if you think technology can replace the teacher, especially for children who don't have access to good resources or a proper school, then there is a problem. And the other thing also we need to understand that it also denies the agency of the classroom dynamics, or the vibrancy of a classroom where people learn from each other. I think that one misses out if you're talking of this medium alone. Yeah, so this is my understanding of, and the fact, and the other thing is also, which I think other people, I'm sure they talk about, the fact that you need time to prepare your classes, and how are you looking at the whole thing, and how you understand the education context in its entirety, and how do you look at your own self and your own role in that context. I think that's very important. If you just look at an online learning replacing a conventional mode, I think it's deeply problematic for a number of reasons. For teachers, it takes away the agency of teachers, students, and the entire space of a classroom, a democratic, egalitarian kind of a space, which one may not be, but one imagines it to be, or one hopes that it is. It's deeply problematic if you look at them like bipolar categories. I can't hear you.
I think there's a problem again with Rityusha's audio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just to fill in for her, I'd like to invite Dhananjay to speak next. Dhananjay, you'll have to unmute your audio. Just a moment.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Perfect.
Thank you, Anveshan, for this opportunity. And I'll be talking about how online teaching has come in a context, and what would be the possibilities and repercussion about it. And in my opinion, online teaching is itself non-panacea sublimation, or worse, par excellence practice. So it has to be located in a context. The question is related to larger human emancipation, and it is important to understand how to understand technology. And technology has invited a slew of attentions. I mean, that is there, and I think that it is important to refer and not to buy everything from him. But there's a philosopher called Martin Heidegger, and he thought that technology is an important component, but it was earlier the custodian of nature. But now it is a master-slave relation between human and nature. What is important in his theorization is that technology as a means and technology as a human activity. So if technology is becoming human activity, not only means, then there is serious problem. I'll relate this with the online teaching, that whether it has become a means or it has to become human activity. So technology per se has not received critical acclaim in critical pedagogy or critical theories on higher education or education. But there are some insights. For example, Herbert Marcuse will say that technology is a repressive desublimation. So technology is repressive desublimation in the context of Herbert Marcuse. But Walter Benjamin sees possibility that technology could be a part of democratization, because here there is a possibility of decentralization in place of centralization in feudalism. Uh, Recently, in the context of Corona, also Zizek was commenting on online and various other aspects, and Zizek proposes dialectics of technology when we are dependent on we are same time. I mean, this is we are independent and dependent. So this is a formulation in Zizek, that using technology may make us independent, but there is a dependent. This is a classical Hegelian formulation that this is a contradiction, unity of this is a unity of opposites. So you are independent sometimes, but you are also dependent. Independent per se has invited lots of positivity, but dependent per se has serious attention. Uh, I look at online teaching with the reference to Paulo Freire. He says in Pedagogy of the Oppressed that an act is oppressive only when it prevents people from being more fully human. So an act is oppressive only when it prevents people from being more fully human. That is Freire. But Rancière is formulating something more important in context of technology and education and in terms of teaching. There's a celebrated book by him, The Ignorant Schoolmaster, 5 Lessons in Intellectual Emancipation in 1991. And here he says that education can't lead to, if kind of education we are providing, it is leading to stultification in place of emancipation. And stultification in a sense that one intelligence is subordinate to another. And the emancipation is that you obey to your intelligence. I mean, you acquire that cognitive ability to, so emancipation versus stultification in. So I suggest that technology has to be seen in dialectical manner, that it is independent pursuit, it is also dependent pursuit. And larger question of political economy can't be ignored. And previous speakers have said many aspects which I may not say, I would have to repeat, but they have said many aspects of technology and which are very important. So technology can be used in a case of democratization of education, independent being, and act toward fully human and emancipator, spectator. So emancipator, spectator, again a concept from Rancière, and he proposes that one should be in position, or one should possess the capacity to translate and interpret association, disassociation from the spectacle. So you should be in position to understand what is happening outside there and ability to come. So technology is independent and dependent both. I mean, independent in a sense that I think online teaching is useful on knowledge engagement. And I'm talking about particularly in the context of this unprecedented time. And this has to be located. I'm just debating in the context of the space cannot be left out for others. I mean, the space is there, one should be utilized. My comment must be understood in the context of lockdown and Corona, and when students are deprived of engagement with university and teachers. So I think online teaching is useful on knowledge engagement, and I think there are 4 important points which are crucial in this sense. One is, I think, in this way, there is a possibility of epistemological advancement. I mean, this way, I think subject learning, newness, questioning, hypothesis, curiosity, certainty, and questioning certainty can be promoted, though in a very limited sense, but epistemological advancement can be pursued in this way. There is also second concern, and the second thing can be achieved through online teaching. One is circumventing the epistemological confinement. circumventing the epistemological confinement. You're reducing individual to the quarantine and you think that then the word is over. That is not right. I think there's a concept in Laka and the Zizek and other Marxist scholars to use it, that the being is the real, and the real, to know real is authentic and individual and independent being. That ability and that cognitive ability one always retaining in terms of crisis. So here using online technology will be helpful, where people are confined, residents are confined to a particular setup, and the setup is far from egalitarian sphere. I mean, if you look at the reports globally, and the confinement is due to unprecedented development, but look at the scale of violence, in domestic violence and many forms of violence reported from various sources. They have gone up. I think in this way, if it can help circumventing the epistemological confinement, that rescuing a student or others people for some time and engaging with the outer world, that would be more fruitful and useful. Third is engaging with the wider epistemic world. I mean, that the possibility opens that not only individual epistemic pursuit, but epistemological engagement. And fourth is, this is also important, that collapsing the distinction between private and public, and that has been, that this is important, that this way the wall between private and public can be dismantled through making it very engaging and very political. But I think there are two crucial engagement of online teaching, and this is based on my own experiences and also on the basis of various feedbacks and the various resources available. First is that in online teaching, there are two crucial limitations. First limitation is life engagement. There is absence of life engagement. I mean, idea of good human being, equal human being, not competitor but cooperator. You can, I mean, this is a very, that is why I said that technology is independent and dependent in classical dialectical sense, that this is something which is very problematic, that how can you can't theorize a no human being without being with the human being. This is the class, this is the important. And online the Marx says that I mean, he used the term dead labor for a machine and others. I think that so the dead labor won't be able to make us more human beings. So you have to be with people, to engage with people and theorize about human society. So life engagement is one assault through this mode of interaction. I mean, barring epistemological advancement. But second is there is something crucial on this, that a pedagogical improvisation, and I think that in any system of education, pedagogical improvisation is a crucial and very fundamental thing. But what is happening, and what is pedagogical improvisation? You adjust according to circumstances, and the circumstances would play a very important role. But in this way, in this particular technological way, there is a danger of pedagogical standardization. So we may see the possibility of, in place of pedagogical improvisation, we may see the coming back of pedagogical standardization, which is a very dangerous domain. But in place of these two, there are three serious other concerns, and they are directly linked with the social deprivation and class question. And three things are there: the time constraint. The time constraint on part of the students and their family would be very important question, that how to come out with the time constant. Second is question of accessibility. I mean, if we are not addressing the question of accessibility to the student, I mean, in terms of providing all means and all possible engagement in higher education, of higher school education, then there's no meaning of this modality and this methodology. And third is we have seen that the students and the first generation students coming to the high school education and higher education, uh, their opportunities should not be circumvented. Even whether you have online teaching or whether you don't have online teaching. So this is important consideration. I think that the pursuit of online teaching will be erroneous sojourn if it becomes itself a teleological pursuit. So I think that teaching itself, this online teaching, is okay in the context of unprecedented time when you need independent engagement with the student and all. But it itself can't become a teleological pursuit, that it is the end of higher education or school education. And in other words, it can't become an end itself. That is seriously problematic. And I think that online teaching has to combine with the 10 crucial questions of higher education. Since I belong to higher education, I'll be talking about only these aspects. And I think online teaching would be more meaningful and more important if 10 conditions are also fulfilled. I think one is financial sufficiency, if budget expenditure is enhanced. Second, education as a public good, if education is treated as a public good. Third, autonomy, if autonomy of higher education is sustained, protected, and maintained. Fourth, there should be a geographical decentralization of higher education institutions. If you look at the various survey, that few cities have more education institutions than smaller states. And when we are discussing in this context, then fifth is GER, I mean general enrollment ratio, which is almost 24.5%. It has to go on. I'm saying sixth is GER for marginal section, like female, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, minority student, particularly Muslim minority and other minority. Their GER has to go up. Even if you look at the GER of marginal section, very below than the GER of the national average. Seventh is online teaching can be more effective and more meaningful if there is affirmative action. And if affirmative action is adopted in the context of privatization of higher education, otherwise we are just not addressing the real concern. And eighth is expansion of higher education will be very important if it has to be done. Ninth, I think online teaching will be more. It is one of the important components. It would be more helpful if there is a teacher and student ratio. If the teacher and student ratio is improved. I mean, if you look at the UGC World Class Institution deemed to be University Regulation 2016, even UGC regulation says that a ratio should not be less than 1.10 after 3 years of declaration. Blah blah blah. But the issue is that if you can't maintain an online teaching, cannot become instrument of not appointment and not going for robust appointment to the university system. And only the way to improve teacher-student ratio is to increase the number of teachers, not reducing the research scholars number in each department or UGPG student. And 10th, I think that if research is promoted and encouraged in higher education with a fully guaranteed autonomy and protection, then I think this would be very important. If online teaching is dealing from these 10 important concerns, then I think it won't have much meaning in the context of democratization of higher education. Thank you.
Hi, am I audible here?
Yes, we can hear you, Swati.
Right. Okay, so I'll go ahead. I have, what I'll do is I'm going to speak since we have about 10 minutes time, I'm going to speak for 5 minutes about the experiences of online teaching that I've personally engaged with. And from there onwards, I'm going to take a cue from something that Abha had said initially, and we'll talk about the policy aspects of this particular online education thing that the MHRD has been pushing. I think that element is something that we need to address. So first and foremost, to speak of my own experiences, I teach in an undergraduate college in Kolkata. It's called Gurudas College. It's under the University of Kolkata. And a vast number of my students are first generation learners. And again, like any public university in this country, we have a significant section of SC/ST OBC students, as well as, again, given the nature of my location of my college in particular, we have a large number of working class students. So this very diverse group of students that I deal with, the fact that we were asked to switch to online is something that has not really helped. And I'm going to share my screen here for a bit. Please tell, if you cannot see it, please let me know. This is a survey that I had undertaken with my students. This is, yeah, hi. Oh. Yeah, am I audible? Can you see the screen here?
Yes, Swati.
Right. So here, this is a survey that I undertaken with my students, and you can see that I had asked them very simply whether or not they have access to a computer or a tablet, and then I'd asked them what electronic device do you use to study, and a large number of them said that they use their mobile phones. Here, these are my second semester students. A large number of them are replying simply smartphone, mobile, smartphone. I use my mobile phone to study. I'd also asked them, do they have access to Wi-Fi or any fixed line connection at home, or do they use mobile data? Again, if you look at this entire thing, a few of them have replied both, but a large majority of them have replied data. And this is a problem because the fact, as it turned out, that like everybody else, I too was quite interested in trying out Zoom and other forms of, be it Google Hangouts or anything. I was quite interested in trying out these because as an enthusiast, I wanted to be able to reach out to them in this way. And it simply, as the results of this survey showed, I conducted them on the 13th of March before the lockdown officially happened. Schools and colleges closed in West Bengal on the 16th. And it was very clear that this is not going to pan out. So what we've been doing, at least what I've been doing, is attempting to reach out to my students via recorded lectures on YouTube, which, as Abha has pointed out, does bring out serious surveillance concerns. But we've been using Google Classroom and recorded lectures on YouTube to do this. But the problem here again is that even doing away with Zoom and hoping that my students, the ones with low data or the ones using mobile phones, will be able to access this. It's simply not feasible. Even this is undemocratic. And as I found is that there are a few students who we've simply not been able to reach to, and these are students from deeply backward districts. Some of them are Adivasi students, and I do not know where they are, how they're managing financially. Some of them have reached out and said that we are not in a position to recharge our phones. And I think these are serious concerns. So when we present a very rosy picture of, as the UGC document did, that the 60 to 70% of the syllabus has been completed online, I do not think this rosy picture is one that works, not at least for my students. And I think it has to be, I teach in a metropolitan city. So I cannot imagine how my colleagues elsewhere in West Bengal alone, let alone other parts of the country, my colleagues in other parts of West Bengal alone are probably facing greater difficulties than we are. And this is something that we have to keep in mind first and foremost. The second thing, from here onwards, as Abha rightly pointed out, that this entire shutdown of our schools, much like schools and colleges, much like the lockdown itself, seems to have been unplanned. And I agree completely. Unlike Abha's university, the university has been taking the onus, and to a certain extent, it has been perhaps a little too active. It wanted to take online classes online exams, for example. But we have had no such instructions from the University of Calcutta. It has been somewhat humane when it comes to its approach of demanding extra work from students. While that has been the case, we also have not really had a clear set of instructions or modalities as to how anything will be done, leaving everything to be done on teachers in a deeply ad hoc manner. And that's how we have all been handling. And that is by no means an adequate situation. But at the same time, despite this unplanned nature of the shutdown, as it has become very clear to me following the MHRD's notifications as well as the UGC's plans, that even as the shutdown itself was unplanned, and even as they've left us to sort of formulate how we do things by ourselves, there is clearly another plan that continues to be at place. And this plan is a long-term plan, something that has less to do with COVID and more to do with the government's and the MHRD's intentions with online learning models, something that has been in place for the past 20 years or so. It has been built over the past 20 years. And it seems it is alarming, especially the hashtag Bharat Pare Online, that campaign that the MHRD started. It seemed to me by that this playful manner in which online was being promoted, it seemed to me that the policy that has been in place and the policy that has clarified, that has also been clarified in the National Education Policy of 2019, those long-term goals are in place. And COVID-19, the catastrophe, this unprecedented, horrific situation that we're in, seems to be yet another excuse to further instead of rethink. And what do I mean by this? If you will recall, now all of us are familiar with Swayam, the MOOCs platform that is currently run by the MHRD. And we know that in the past 5 years, roughly 221.4 crores have been spent of public money on building Swayam to what it is. And Swayam is currently quite cheap. It is free to enroll. However, the courses do have a charge 100 rupees, so 1,000 rupees, 500 for SC/ST OBC students if you want a certificate. So Swayam, let me share my screen again. From this is a part of the model curriculum that the AICTE had put forth. And just a minute, I'm sorry, here. And here, if you can see this question number concerning shortage and quality of teachers. And what does the AICTE say? To address the issue that quality teachers are not available in central, state and private universities, institutes in the country, besides a large number of such institutes have a large number of vacancies that have not been filled since long, the MHRD has embarked on the initiative called Swayam. So instead of addressing the fact that the reason why we have vacancies is because recruitments have been frozen, Swayam has been used and it has been conceptualized as an alternative to filling up vacancies and hiring actual teachers. And I fear, and this has been very clear in the way that the MHRD has been notifying us about the various things available, be it the National Digital Library, which is a great thing, by the way, to Swayam, and the way in which it has been proposing Bharat Pare Online. We've had Venkaiah Naidu, the Vice President of India, suggesting that this might be the new normal, even after COVID has passed. And I think this is something that we have to address very seriously. That it seems, and this is keeping in mind what else the government has been doing in other areas unrelated to education, it seems quite clear that instead of using the COVID moment to rethink and to reconsider where we may have gone wrong, instead this seems to be another opportunity to push through certain agendas which are already in place. And that, I think, is particularly alarming. And that's something that we do have to respond to. The idea, and I'll pause here now, I see I've spoken for 10 minutes, that my idea here is not to suggest that we do away with the gains of technology altogether, because again, the students and teachers movements in the past 20 years have also managed to clinch for us certain technological access to certain infrastructural innovations, which I think are crucial to the expansion of higher education in this country. And we're not going to give that up, certainly. But at the same time, this entire plan, this policy vision which seems to suggest that we can replace teachers, which is now understood as something that's always already there and something that doesn't need to be amended. We can replace teachers with online education, something like Swayam, itself is problematic. Not only does it, of course, endanger the careers of numerous research scholars in this country, it also then eventually places us in a position where only those with purchasing power can possibly have access to the real thing, which is the physical space of the classroom, whereas everybody else might have to make do with just here, you can have Swayam or anything. If you can pay money, you can go to EDX and maybe access a Harvard course. And this is a problem. So I'll pause here. I've spoken for 11 minutes, which is enough, I think. Thank you, everybody. We can go on with the questions after this.
I think Rityusha's audio is not working. Yeah, her audio is not working. So, thank you, all the speakers. So we have a lot of questions. We have a very vibrant chat box right now with us. So there are a lot of questions pouring in. I'll just start with a question that Angeline has asked. The question is open to all speakers. Many students, especially those from the minority communities and those who are critical of the present establishment, reached out to me with the concerns about downloading the Arogya Setu app on their phones. What is your opinion about the UGC and MHRD imposing the download of Arogya Setu on students, given the fact that the app has potential to be used as a tool for mass surveillance? Combined with UAPA, will it not put students in the path of danger?
I think absolutely, and this has to be opposed. This is a major concern and it will be used for surveillance. There is no doubt about it. And I agree to Swati. See, I spoke about this mistrust between government and between people. I mean, today that mistrust has only increased. If you look at COVID-19, ever since this crisis has come, we see that the government is pushing their own agenda from Thali, Diya, everything. That also, in some sense, on the WhatsApp, there was a floodgate of messages full of superstition and so on and so forth. So their agenda of, dismantling any scientific temperament which may remain critical thinking, they want to attack that. Same with the cow urine and cure coronavirus. Now we look at NTCA protesters being, arrested across the nation. Similarly, on online education also, I agree with Swati. The fear is that they are pushing their own agenda, which was also part of the new education policy. And I don't see Setu any different from this. But I think as social scientists, as teachers, this is also an opportunity to tabulate, to write articles around our own experiences. And that will help us in the long run. So I think very informed articles about all these apps, teachers writing about their own experiences should be done by teachers in a very big manner. See, earlier when we were writing about MOOCs and STEM, it was taken to be like imagined reality. They were working with imagined reality. Today, our experiences are there. And you know why this is important? Because it is not experience at my end which is important. It is the experience at the student's end which has become very important. And it is for the student to understand that they cannot really study when they are at home. That it is the classrooms which produce that environment where cutting across class, section, their caste, they can reach out, they can question, and they're away from their homes, which keep disturbing that democratic scientific environment. So it is their experience also which will matter. And I think I'm very happy that Swati is doing it. And I've also done a survey amongst my students and I want to share it. And that has to be done. That has to be collated. And about Setu also, I think unions should oppose it, teachers should oppose it. We need to know more about anything which we download on our gadgets. whether it is where the government is asking us or whether it is some other agency asking us to download, and we need to respond to that. More informed articles should come out on that front, so that we can, for example, even on PM Care, see, it is the articles which helped people to make their mind that what PM Care is all about, that it is different from PM Relief, National Relief Fund. And today people are much more informed on that front. Similarly about the Setu, also this application, articles, we need informed articles which can take the message to people, and people can then oppose it in a more coherent manner, in a more rational manner. So that has to be our effort, and I hope that there is team of people who are working on this, and some people will publish their articles soon on this.
Any comment from the other speakers on this? Yeah, Dhananjay, just a moment. I'll just unmute your audio. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There are three important concerns which if you have followed. One is, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. I think of late what has happened, not before, I mean, just on the big, I mean, as this corona and other things, the security and surveillance per se has gone up. I mean, this is one of the concerns which is also affecting higher education. That if you look at the various policies and programs and the suggestions for the research work, and how some research works are doing, and how some research work can be fruitful. So idea of democracy and the democratic choices of the research. So security and surveillance both have become seriously policy measures. I mean, and this is really worrisome. I mean, of late, and this is a really dangerous trend and path. Second is that if you look at the class differentiation between private university and the public universities, there's a very open and very apparent class differentiation between private universities and public universities. And most of the policies, particularly if you look at this communication, virtual communication, virtual communication, constant communication, have come from a privileged background, a privileged classes that has been, without thinking, has been imposed on public universities, while not taking actual facts and composition of higher education. And third is that education and emancipation, in a way, has become almost last concern, or not at all any concern in the policy making during this period or before that period. I think this period has accentuated the crisis, which is already there as a part of neoliberalism. So corona crisis, online teaching has to be linked more form of capitalism.
All right. Thank you, Dhananjay. Is there anything else that the other speakers would like to add? Disha and Swati?
No, from the responses that I can see, again, people are largely talking in terms of online versus offline. That to me seems to be a problem, because while the experiences are valid and they have a point of view which is quite right, like homes can be oppressive spaces, but it's not necessarily true that classrooms are democratic, egalitarian spaces. So it's that kind of a binary that, this is good, that's bad. I think we should avoid that trap. Not all schools, not all classrooms are good democratic spaces that we should aspire for. There is a lot of discrimination, prejudice, stereotyping. So that kind of a online versus online, I think we need to get away from that trap.
Yes, I agree with Disha here. I think we can absolutely harness whatever space we have. I mean, if something is available to us, we should grab it and take it. But coming back to these binaries don't really work. But coming back to Aragya Setu in particular, again, I'm not an expert, but I would urge everybody to go through what a lot of digital scholars have been saying for a while now. I shared an article link here in the chat box, which you should take a look at. The Internet Freedom Foundation has posted some, this is on their website. 45 organizations have given a representation to the government today addressing the privacy issues. And these things are not necessarily very accessible to me. I'm a scholar of English literature, but nonetheless, I try to keep a track of it. As for the initial question as to how we'll deal with this, now, I think student organizations will have to, as well as staff associations and other citizens group will have to seriously address this imposition of surveillance. Our classrooms may not open anytime soon. It will probably be a few more months, if at all, this year. But we have to formulate means as to this, how we can combat something, a tool that the government has clearly made, and this is keeping in mind that the entire WhatsApp hacking saga, the Pegasus software thing, that seems to have been forgotten completely. I do not think we can be anything but suspicious of this and push back to the best of our ability. That's all.
Thank you so much.
Pranav, can I, before you ask the next question, can I share my data, though it is only of 46,
sure.
but I will want to share it.
Definitely, sure. Go ahead, Abha.
Okay, so this is what I have, I conducted the survey between, it is only 46 students and most of them are, I mean, all of them are women. So this is something which, so it doesn't really represent the entire student group, but nevertheless, I want to share it because my findings are not very different from what Hyderabad University has done with 2,500 students. And I think if we conduct things systematically, yes, there will be variation amongst disciplines, because in many disciplines we still get students. For example, science students do come from a background where parents are able to spare some time for the student to, the bachas to study, give them that care or tuition and so on and so forth. Many more marginalized students from marginalized sections come to humanities, social sciences. And for example, data, if it is done, a survey which if it will be done in Urdu, students studying Urdu or Hindi, it will be completely different. And therefore, I feel that today there is an opportunity where we can record our real experiences to combat this whole push towards MOOC and SWAM. Okay, though, I mean, in this changed reality where we are living, that we are faced with a situation where universities have to close, we need to think what the role the universities will play. And I believe that students have to be engaged, people have to be kept engaged and distracted from that uncertainty which we are all facing. But this is the survey which I conducted, and let us see. I mean, we are sending our material and most of the students say that they are able to access material. Okay, though in the box where I had asked them to write their feedback, they said that they are looking at small screens and it is becoming difficult for them to read on the small screens. So that is their problem, but at least the reading material is reaching them. Okay, and whether the material is explanatory. For my course, they said that it is explanatory, but in many courses, especially again, I'm coming back to Urdu. One of my friend is in Urdu department, and she says there is very less resources present on the online thing. So they are finding it very difficult to send texts or PDFs and all to the students. So they are facing a great difficulty there. Okay. Now, if you look at this, are you able to join Zoom session? Only 40%, 35% people say that they are able to join. Half the students, 47% say that they are able to join only sometimes, and 16% students are saying that they have never joined. And if I look at the decrease in the regularity, only 2 students out of 46 said that they have joined all Zoom sessions. Okay, and therefore it is not, this blue portion is about that. Only 2 students out of 46 are saying that they have always joined Zoom session, and 35 are saying that they have joined more than half the sessions, but a very large number, 42% are saying that they have not joined half the session. 17%, close to 18% have said that they are not able to join Zoom session at all. And if I ask them, what are the reasons? we see that connectivity is the biggest reason. I mean, our largest group is saying that connectivity is the problem. But because I think this number may change, but 20% people said that the environment at home is not conducive for them to join Zoom sessions. Now, I think all this is very important. We need to interview our students. The student groups should also interview students and put down all these experiences of students and teachers, because yes, to fight COVID and these lockdowns, we will have to use a different platform. But a case should be maintained, a case has to be built that the classroom teaching cannot be replaced by online engagement. And this cannot become a permanent way of engaging students. Apart from the fact that it will decrease the employment, this is not the way in which the students can be really engaged. Also, the way I said experience I shared earlier, that, um, see, the group only 53% said that, they are not able to have any group studies. Now, this is what the classroom does. Okay, all this is missing right now. It is a one-way traffic. The teacher is saying something. Whether the student is able to assimilate, is able to reflect, is able to ask questions, all that is gone. And look at this, that the group study, which is also one of the important things which universities provide, people cutting across their religion, class, region, come and study together. That also is a way to integrate society. Yes, I agree with a speaker here who said that no, not all classrooms are democratic, but at least there is a possibility, there is a probability that they may become like that. At least we can aim towards that. At least when students come from across the state, they learn that the conditioning, the things they are taught at home can be broken, that these are only conditioning, and many people are living different lives, and therefore maybe many more things are correct. What they are taught at home is not necessarily correct. So classrooms provide that space to students. And right now we see that the group study has gone down. Now this is again among science students, where many students are already techno savvy and so forth. This group study component must have gone down drastically for students for other disciplines in a very drastic manner. And all this needs to be recorded. Okay, this is about attendance, and I just want to show that, a very large group was fairly regular, above 70. If I want to say that how many had attendance above 70%, you will see that only 17% students had less than 65% attendance before mid-semester break. And now the graph is just the opposite. Now their regularity has just gone down drastically, and only 22-23% students are attending classes on a more regular basis. A very large number has been pushed in the domain where they're not able to join Zoom classes, and be regular on them. And therefore, this is, we have seen that lockdown has treated people very differently. I'll stop this share. Lockdown has treated people very differently, and the experiences of a migrant worker, of daily wages, is completely different from experience of a person which belongs to my own class. And we may think this as a good time when we are reading, we are doing whatever we want to do, but that is a luxury, and only few have that luxury. And disparities have just increased. The lockdown has created those disparities which already existed, but right now these disparities in our lives, the difference in our lives, have been amplified, and that is happening to every sector, and that has to be recorded. If this is also happening in the education sector, that those students who have an environment at home, who are techno savvy, have money and have gadgets, are better off right now than the students who are not belonging to that class or religion or region. And I think one of the important things here too is say that, we do not have faith. There is no faith in the government, and we fear that much is being pushed through this COVID situation, and that needs to be responded to also. Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Sure, go ahead, Disha.
Yeah, so see, I'm a great supporter of public schooling and face-to-face classroom teaching. So let me submit that. But my submission here is that we should stop looking at social reality in terms of binaries, because then you have a perspective which will become so overwhelming that you sort of, it engulfs whatever you're saying. So that's my problem. But if you look at Abha's survey also, which she's conducted, which is very, very relevant, I think it's very adds a lot of value to the whole debate. But largely the questions which are asked are relating to access to material, understanding of resources, technological glitches, participation, regularity, this, that, and the other. All I'm saying is that you need to reflect on what's really happening on those online platforms and what is the meaning of learning and what is the meaning of education and how do you look at students, agency of students and teachers. So a lot of our conversation is around accessibility, comprehensibility, technological glitches, which could be a problem because that we need to go beyond that, and we need to have certain fundamental. And again, the point that classrooms and all classrooms are not egalitarian spaces. Of course, what I'm trying to say is that there is potential for sure, but cannot go with the assumption that a conventional classroom is always a better classroom. We need to be constantly critical, constantly reflect, constantly do research, and try and sort of find out what we are saying and what the implications are. So this, for instance, this whole debate about public-private education, again, like I said, I'm a supporter of public education, but we also constantly need to question what the public really means. Is it egalitarian? Is it democratic? Are every student equally represented? So these are things that we need to talk about, and we need to move beyond binaries. And I'd like to maybe respond to Anjum Parveen's question. So I agree that homes can also be oppressive spaces, but to assume that all homes are oppressive spaces is a problem. So when we talk of education of girls, either in a conventional face-to-face classroom or through an online kind of a platform, what is more important than the medium is the ways in which girls, for instance, are represented in textbooks, the ways in which schools of such spaces are organized, the ways in which the assumptions that you have about different genders work in your interaction with them. So these are certain fundamental principles which needs to be in place in any kind of setup. So let's not get lost in the debate of the medium being overpowering. Let's also look at certain other fundamental principles where the dignity of each child and all that needs to be maintained, rather than just getting lost in the debate of the medium, becoming overwhelming.
Thank you, Disha. There's a question from Anupama here. How viable an alternative can homeschooling be to strengthen education at the grassroots level?
Where's the question?
That's up in the chat box. Actually, you'll have to scroll up a lot. So the question is, I'll just repeat the question for you in case you're not able to scroll up. The question is, how viable an alternative can homeschooling be to strengthen education at the grassroots level?
See, homeschooling is a good option for people who have the cultural capital, not for everybody. It doesn't work like that. If you have the cultural capital, if you see children who are homeschooled, their parents go all out, supporting them in different ways, making them travel, going for conferences, getting the resources at home. So it's a viable option only for a few elite people, not for everybody. It doesn't work like that. You have to always be cognizant of the context from which a child comes and what is the situation at home like. So in that sense, you have to see homeschooling. Homeschooling cannot possibly be an option for everybody. No, it can't be. The government has to sort of pitch in and has to provide free schooling to everybody.
True. Are there any other speakers who would like to respond to this question? Dhananjay, just yeah. You'll have to unmute your audio.
Fine.
Yeah.
Should I say something on this? I think I agree with her that homeschooling is just a bad idea, and I think that homeschooling would accentuate various social and class division in society. And it has to, one has to also analyze the public education in totality, and the public education per se is, there are lots of undemocratic practices itself. So homeschooling is a bad idea, and it will give more to privileged classes. public education is the only alternative I would suggest, but it has to be also interrogated time and again from caste, class, gender perspectives and the participation from various sections. So per se doesn't say anything. It has to be, one has to go beyond that.
I don't
And
think that.
I think, as Disha has correctly pointed out, that homeschooling is only for elite. You have to understand that you cannot make that as the form at the grassroots level. That's very important to point out, that it cannot actually replace. Homeschooling cannot. And as a mother of a young child, I think that I want my child to go to school. I want him to have a social life beyond the walls of a house. I mean, I want him to go out, make new friends. And education is also about learning and unlearning and learning and unlearning. And that can happen only if you draw the students out of their comfort zone, their houses, and out of their homes. So this is very important. And therefore, the schools and universities, we see, while we are responding and we fear that the government may be using COVID-19 to also push SWAM and MOOC, I think teachers who are engaged in classroom teaching at the school level or at universities need to have greater faith that this cannot be actually replaced. No parent and no teacher is looking forward to this replacement. Abroad also, something maybe have been replaced, but I don't see that big universities have been made redundant because of MOOCs. And they floated the idea of MOOCs long back. So today the government is pushing that, but I think that we need to have faith in our own systems, and I think parents want to send their children. In fact, every parent wants to invest in education because they see that as a possibility of the source of upward mobility. And why so many students come to Delhi? See, more than 2.5 lakh students apply for Delhi seats, which are like 56,000. Because state universities have collapsed. I think what we need to, as educators, as academicians, we need to underline that our takeaway from COVID situation is that public sector has to be strengthened. I'm saying that right away, that education for many girl students will stop if the government does not announce scholarships right away. And this has to be our focus. We need to see that government gives more money to education. Otherwise, my fear is that soon, saying about COVID, taking that as a plea, the government is going to reduce funding in the public sector in a very major manner. And we may also see 30% cut. This government has anyway, attacked scientific temper. I mean, there is an assault on scientific temper and all. And investment in research has gone down in last few years. Now citing COVID and saying about giving economic just slowdown hai, that will become an excuse for the government to, in fact, decrease the investment further. Therefore, I think what is important is that the So what is important is that students and teachers right away talk about importance in investment in higher education. And if this lockdown has to continue for a year, I think a very valid demand is that the state governments and the central government invest more in education and have to provide internet connectivity. Students should not be using their data. Maybe the families cannot afford even data, internet connectivity, and laptops and netbook. It is not enough to train a teacher to handle these situations. It is also important that you empower students. So that kind of investment we want in higher education.
Can I just add to what Abha said?
Sure, go ahead, Disha.
Having children at home all the time and being responsible for the education can be very oppressive for the parents. So we don't need to talk just about children running away from an oppressive atmosphere, but also parents. It's like tough.
That's true. That makes a lot of sense because in a country like India where we're already short in faculty in schools and universities, something like home education is totally capable of amplifying the the class divide.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the next question. There's a question from Bhavna, and the question is: with the rise in online learning platforms and popularity of online certificates and online teaching gaining popularity, will the online education be considered at par with the regular mode? Uh, okay, Abha is also with us. So I'll just repeat the question. Abha, the question is, there's a question from Bhavna. The question is, with the rise in online learning platforms and popularity of online certificates and online teaching gaining popularity, will the online education be considered at par with regular mode? Since we are in a transition phase, how effective will online education be for professional courses?
I have something to say in response to that.
Sure,
May
go ahead,
I?
Swati.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think this is a two-part question really, and it needs to be addressed similarly. The online teaching that we have been talking about so far, whatever we have been doing to the best of our ability, thanks to COVID, these Zoom classes, these WhatsApp lectures, whatever you have it, that is, while we are calling it online teaching, that is not how online learning is conducted. Online courses, if you look at, just go to Swayam, log in and see how the programs are done. First and foremost, an online lecture, the ones that we are doing are ad hoc lectures undertaken under circumstances of great difficulty. But online learning requires something more than my bedroom and just my mobile phone and a recorded lecture. It requires a proper setup. It requires students who have consented to this mode of education, knowing that they have access to whatever is required for this kind of learning. So there has to be a difference between whatever we are talking about today and the MOOCs and the online certifications. That said, to come back to the next part of the question, whether or not will we ever seen at par, it doesn't have to be at par. In fact, if we understand them as two different modes of learning, both which benefits, I think that's a better thing. But the problem remains that policy has put them in oppositional positions. A lot of the online certifications, the ones that are popular, are in fact for working professionals as opposed to regular students. And those are a different ballgame altogether. So we'll have to be very clear, very careful when we talk, conflate everything as online, because yes, certainly we're using technology, but it's all of us are not the same thing. That's all I had to say here.
Should I add something? One line?
Yes, go ahead, Dhananjay.
Yeah, I think the online thing has two aspects. One is, I think we can't delink it from the open university system. And I think biggest casualty on higher education or any form of higher education was 1987 education policy by the Congress government, and where you had the Indira Gandhi National Open Universities. And we know the kind of class differentiation was created within Indian higher education, that for poor, for unemployed, those who can't get to regular university, they have this, I mean, they are all very bad system that you don't come to the university, we will offer you degree through open universities. So you are rejecting many people in place of, as Kothari Commission had said, that have 6 to 10% of your higher GDP on higher education and education. We had started the process of this open university. The open university in neoliberalism has gone to the online, completely online certificate model. If Bhavna's question would, I'll answer that as far as knowledge is concerned, it has no merit, it has no value, but it would gain currency in neoliberalism, because that would be the easiest way for the promotion of market and the market led, I mean education based on market.
Great. Is there anything that Abha would like to add? Abha or Disha?
See, I think my response also depends upon my understanding of how long this lockdown will be there. You know, and I think it is important that the government applies its mind, the agencies apply their mind, and find solutions looking at what is the period for which they think that there will be a lockdown. Now, if I am, even if I think in terms of exams or whether for one whole year lives can be put on hold, is that doable? That means much more connection between student, teachers, policy makers. that kind of decision that for a year, and there have been articles which say that in a year everything should be shut down. Now I want to understand that whether that is doable or not. And I see that universities across, whether in our country or abroad, are
Not able to listen.
So I think Abha's connection is not available.
Yeah, an example of how technology works. So she's back.
Yeah, so what I want to say is that is it for a year? Can that happen? And I see that universities abroad and here and the government agencies do not have the will to say that for a year, this 1 year from people's life will be just subtracted. And let there be no nursery admissions, and there should be no undergraduate admissions at undergraduate, postgraduate level, because anyway nobody is getting employment. That kind of statement cannot be made. If that could be made, even then I think universities have a role right now to play. And even when I understand that online cannot replace classroom teaching, and it will never, my faith is that it will never be able to replace. I need to keep the students engaged, and therefore any work I'm doing right now on online is just a way to keep students engaged. And I think my personal experience is that suppose I was not to teach, suppose my university would not have required me to teach, yes, I would have done what I wanted to do. But I think to fight the uncertainty, some structure is also necessary for a large number of people. They need to be distracted from the uncertainty distracted from the, you know, WhatsApp coming every second to say this is what is happening on COVID, this is what is happening, things are.
Connection is lost.
You know, is needed. Also, the thing is that my positive thing about online thing is that because we created these interfaces, now the students know that they can meet on Zoom, that they can work together, they can discuss things, they can also discuss their lives on Zoom or some other online platforms. And that is the positive side. So we need to understand the role universities will play anyway. My
Abha,
net
you
is
there?
very
Yeah.
unstable, so let some other person say. I think I'll rest my case here, but I think as social scientists, we need to jot down all our important experiences and publish them so that we have a better learning out of this COVID situation.
Thank you. Thank you, Abha. Okay, there's another question from Gaurav. I think the question is primarily to Disha and all. Okay, so it's open for all. The question is, if online teaching is getting pushed by MHRD as a part of privatization of education, then how the school, both the government and private schools and the university teachers unions are going to come together for a joint resistance? And there's another question. The second part of the question is, are there any talks, discussions going on across the unions, including the workers' unions for this?
No, one just needs to constantly talk about it, reflect, and like write about it, or yeah, that's all that you can do. You need to oppose, you need to resist, you need to talk about it. And it's not just the government, actually, it's a lot of private players also who are pushing for online teaching. So it's not just the government, there are lots of people who believe in the power of the online mode and rubbishing of teachers and so I like to respond to Tisha's question. The thinking among policymakers around teachers is that teachers need to have, and this is more the context of school teachers, but I would imagine that the same applies to colleges as well. If the government thinks that the teachers should have passion, people with passion should teach, and that will take care of a lot of problems. So what the government is doing, first of all, is the problem: how do you measure passion? I mean, how do you measure passion? They're passionate about teaching, passionate about students, passionate children, passionate about their subjects. how do you measure this vague term called passion, which may be important in anyone's life? For anyone to be a good, whatever, like you are a teacher, doctor, student, I think it's good to be passionate. But if you're saying that teachers alone need to be passionate, then the implication is that they don't need to be trained, they don't need to be paid well, then they don't need to be on permanent position, they need to be on contract. So the understanding or the deeper implication is the underlying implication is that despite structural constraints, if you're a passionate N2 person, then you can take care of all the problems, which is a deeply problematic thing and which is also very dangerous. That if you pile on to so what you're saying is that despite structural constraints, you're individualizing a structural problem. You're saying that there are constraints, all right, but if you are passionate, you can take care of this. If you're passionate, you can take care of the low salaries, the contractual nature of your appointment. So there is a big divide between the way teachers think about themselves and the way the government thinks about teachers, for sure. If you look at schools also, now you have CCTV cameras and all kinds of monitoring and surveillance happening. That's deeply problematic.
All right.
You
Anything from the
ignore the
other
structural
speakers?
problem, you pile on to teachers' individual attributes and like attitudes, as if to say that that will take care of all the structural problems, which is not going to happen. Or the fact that you joined a noble profession, why should you think about salaries? Or if passion is there, then why do you need to be trained? Passion alone will take you very far. So there are a lot of contradictions in the way the government thinks, in the way people in general think about education, the solutions, teachers. On one hand, you have pile on to teachers, you have lots of expectations from teachers. On the other hand, you constantly ridicule teachers. So there are huge challenges. And it's not just the government, that's a general thinking, I think, across board.
True. Is there anything that the other speakers would want to add to
Just
Disha?
to Rityusha's question, whether teachers are giver and students are receiver, and the UGC is giver and teachers are receiver. What has happened in higher education policy? If you look at 20 years of the rule of, it is interesting when education ministry become human resource development ministry during that period in in 1987 onwards, when education was treated as human resource development. That was one of the biggest assault on higher education. The trend continues. Actually, if we think from the critical pedagogy perspective, and the private will say that the modern education system is based on is a banking system where students are receiver and teachers are depositor, and is a very hierarchical system in terms of pedagogy. In place of reforming, and there have been movements, and progressive movements are fighting for that, the neoliberalism and privatization, and I must say time and again that the current crisis and current alternatives and current solutions by the policymakers is just reflection of the larger part of the privatization agenda. And this has not come in 1 or 2 days, on 1 or 2 months. It was waiting to happen, and it has happened in this manner. Unless or until there is a move, there is a process for public education and stopping further the privatization of school and higher education, such practices and such modalities will keep coming. For example, almost on 80% issues, UGC gives just this advisory or notice, and all universities are, particularly central universities, if you look at their mechanism, UGC gives some suggestion in morning or afternoon. All central university will issue some order in night without, there is an academic council, there is an executive council, there are people, there are teachers, there are non-teaching staff, there are students. Also would have been consulted on various processes, how to come about it. But rather than aping and replicating what UGC is saying, has reduced the role of universities as autonomous institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dhananjay. So I think Disha has to leave for some reason, but we'll continue with the question and answers. thank you so much for taking out time for this, Disha.
Till what time is
The-
it? I mean, till what time
I
we
mean,
want to have?
we're left with a lot of questions, so I think it'll take another half an hour at least.
Okay. I can stay back for 10 more minutes maybe, but
We'd be glad. I mean,
Yes.
as much time as you can take out for us.
By
okay.
by any chance, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are. You are.
Okay, so
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I'll just try to shoot one question to all the speakers. Since all of you have mentioned that government has been stressing on a graded approach to post lockdown situation, what is your recommendation in terms of priority steps in returning to actual physical teaching? Now that we have a hindsight of the challenges.
Yeah. I mean, any of you can go ahead with the question.
It's a difficult question. We need to be astrologers to be able to answer that question, I think. And astrology these days, I believe, is in great demand, especially with our minister. We don't have a perfect solution in any case, so it's a compromise solution for sure. And yeah, I don't know whether we have a perfect answer as to how to address this limitation. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'll have to keep 2-3 scenarios in mind, given that we don't know how the COVID situation will progress in our country, and there is no question that the safety of our students is paramount. Like that is first and foremost something we have to keep in mind. That schools and colleges where we stuff students into 60 students in one classroom, these are like petri dishes, and we have to keep this in mind whenever we physically return to the classroom spaces. I know there are a lot of suggestions being made about staggered and shifts and whatnot, and I don't know, this is something that administrators will have to and possibly think in terms of 2-3 scenarios depending on what happens in every, and this has to happen in every individual state as well, our red zones and the orange zones and the green zones. So yeah, there's no one size fits all solution to this right now. This is unprecedented. I wish we had answers.
True. Is there anything else that Dhananjay or Abha would like to add to it? Abha, would you like to add to the point by Swati? Probably not. Okay, so let's just move on to the next question. There's a question from Firdaus Malik. It's a very important question. So he writes, I'm Firdaus Malik from Kashmir, presently doing PhD from Central University of Lucknow. Kashmir was famous for the lockdown since 2008. We are normally having 32 days as working days in one semester till 2019. You can yourself see what type of teaching learning process would we have. That means from 365 days in a year, we only have 64 working days because of the lockdown, which Kashmiris enjoyed till the 4th of August 2019. And after that, we have had administrative crackdown on us for almost 7 months now. And after that, COVID-19 crisis hardly matters for us. So my question is how we Kashmiris can keep the teaching and learning process, how we can continue with it, and please suggest how young students of Kashmir should deal with it. I mean, that's an extremely difficult question for anyone
Yeah,
to
I
answer,
don't
but
think anyone of us
yeah.
will have answers to it, except support what he's saying. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, what's happening, it's criminal. Even in the middle of a pandemic, even as we talk about online learning and the magnificence of the same, even as we talk about Swayam and the 220 crores we've spent on it, we're also simultaneously told that Kashmiri students do not require the internet, even though for whatever reason, we have also been told that Kashmir will surely, Kashmiri youth need jobs and education, and that's all they need, apparently. If that is the case, then there is a clear contradiction at work. And I'm sorry, but at this point, people like us who are on the other side of the so-called divide, we can only express our solidarity and push back against this at every cost, because our colleagues in Kashmir do not have the luxury even of reaching out to their students on WhatsApp, and that is a problem. There are educational institutions in Kashmir. There are Kashmiri students in every part of the country, some of whom have gone home and we have not heard back from them. And I do not know how to possibly even address the forgetting the learning loss, which is paramount again. I do not even know how to address the mental health concerns that Kashmiri students must be undergoing since August 2019. It's simply unspeakable what's happening right now.
Dhananjay, you'll have to unmute your audio. Yeah.
I have to. I would like to add one point. The point is as follows: that I'm surprised. I mean, not surprised, but 65 days teaching in a year is a really a serious negligence and complete failure of higher education and authorities in that state. Because as per UGC guidelines, and the guidelines are revised time and again, but the one thing is very clear since many years, 2002, 3, I mean before that even, that 180 days teaching are compulsory for declaring BA and MA degree legitimate degree. So in place of providing safety and security of having 180 days teaching, 180 days teaching, it doesn't include examination dates, it doesn't include the days for admission and all that. Purely 180 days, 90 days in one, if you go by the semester, if you go by the semester system, that 90 days in one semester and 19 days in another semester will be kept only for teaching, not for any other. I mean, there could be many other things. So this is, and this is a serious lapse, and we all have to think about it. I mean, how to address such, and this has to be addressed, I think.
Can I just add to what Dhananjay has said? I want to add that, we have been looking at semester system cannot take this shock of the pandemic. And if we really want solution, I think looking at university, their sizes and everything, much more freedom needs to be given to universities. And if they can go to annual system, where they don't have to test students so frequently as what semester system does, I think that will
We keep losing Abha every now and then, I think.
Yeah. Something with the connection.
Yeah, there's a problem with the connection, I think. Abha, are you there? Can you?
No, I think.
Yeah, she's there. I can see her. Yeah.
Okay. I want to make the last one point, that some more freedom has to be given to universities, and even looking at choice-based credit system, maybe the universities can move to annual system where they give generic elective to students. So some semblance with we can take positive sides of choice-based credit system, but some of the universities should be allowed to move to annual system, and this vacation should be used to bring that annual system back. In terms of preparing syllabus and all, because I don't think so semester system will give enough padding for us to take this, even if say the lockdown continues till July, August, I think to take the pressure of these missing months, it will spell over many years. 2 years, 3 years may just go in trying to adjust our academic calendar in order to take care of these missing months. And I think annual system is better for a very big university like ours, where there is 1.5 lakh students. enrolled only for the UG program, taking semester exams, running semester exam, and adhering to
No, connection lost.
Yeah, there's a problem.
struggle with the technology, and every time I say after two sentences, the person goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
then,
that it is see, if you have students coming back and doing pen and paper exam, again physical distancing has to be kept into mind, and this means that your exam may run in many more batches than it is usually done. Are universities prepared? Are universities prepared to open and invite all the 3-year students? All these are also important aspects on which we need to discuss on various platforms. And I think many universities are looking at, I mean, universities should be given freedom. Our university has 1.5 lakh students only in the UG level. Can we have semester exam for such a big number right now? I don't think so university will be able to tackle it. And therefore, I think it is also a time when we start looking at annual system as a solution to this kind of mess in which we are right now, so that we teach for longer periods, so that the students get more time to assimilate, and exams are not as frequent as they are currently. So I think that one more thing needs to be done. Universities, the UGC panel has given some freedom to universities, and it needs to be, universities need to be strengthened, their autonomy needs to be strengthened, so that they can respond to this situation in which we are currently in a better manner, so that they equip themselves better. Each university will have its own solution, and I think that's the right approach. What can be done for a small unit in Ashoka University, Shivnadar, or some other place may not be a solution for me. So that has to be understood. And semester exams, teachers and the administration sweating over how to run semester exams. Even if suppose I have to say in January, then I again take an exam in April. I don't know whether universities will really open or not. So I think the best solution for Delhi University will be to move towards annual system, and that's why I'm saying the agencies should apply their mind whether we are looking at only 3-month lockdown, or is it that the educational institutions will be locked for a larger period, because that really today for higher education at least, see, the school education still happens within the region, but higher education students are traveling from one end to another. So for that kind of thing, is the government ready? Will it allow all states have to be declared green before they allow students of their states to travel? So what are your solutions then? What kind of time frame you are looking at? These are very crucial issues, and they should be looked at right away, so that our solutions can be slightly long term. Then thinking about how to do pen and paper exam and doing online teaching, which may not be really be a okay solution, given that we do not have understanding. We are teachers who are always, we have always engaged in direct teaching, and we may not be the best people to handle online teaching. So some training, something, and how to empower students on the other end with data, with the network, with the laptops, with netbooks, so that they can really
we lost.
Rana? Hello?
Yeah, yes, Disha.
Yeah, I need to leave, but I just wanted to add to what
It is what I
Firdaus
wanted
was
to
asking. Can I say something?
Yes, I think Abha's not speaking anymore. So yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so what Firdaus, I completely understand what you're saying, and obviously there is no solution, because first of all, we need to address that there is a genuine problem, there is a conflict. In fact, if you relate this to our education system is a very safe, sanitized kind of an atmosphere. गाय हमारी माता है, कोई नहीं उसे खाता है, हिंदू मुस्लिम सिख ईसाई आपस में भाई भाई. We've never had books, textbooks which have addressed, acknowledged conflict, marginalization, underprivilege, discrimination, and all of that. So we need to. So education system is also built around a very safe principle where you pretend that everything is all right, and there's no problem outside. So in your case, I think the fact that there is a genuine concern which we need to acknowledge and respect, and then maybe think of ways in which one can address it. I think that's most important rather than saying, oh, this is okay, it'll get all right. You deep breathe, you meditate, you do yoga, you do all of that. So these are the kind of solutions which are being offered these days, which is again deeply problematic. That you ignore structural problems out there, which the government, the state needs to take care of, and you pile on to the individual saying that you can take care of, and it's a question of an attitude. So you go for vipassana, or you go for meditation, or you go for yoga. So yeah, it's not a response to, and this is a response to a question and concern, and not really a solution, because yeah, we've got into this habit of pretending that things are fine, and we don't really address and acknowledge those structural constraints. We keep piling on to the individuals and making them responsible for taking care of all the problems which are out there.
That's actually very true, Disha. So much for the scientific temper.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Anything that you talk about, you see corporal punishment in schools. There are 100, 200 students sitting in the classroom and they're making a lot of noise. And you pile onto the teacher and ask her to deep breathe, meditate, relax. And how the hell is it going to work? You have board exams which have been which have got disrupted. Every second day, I'm getting some messages from the school saying that these are PPDs for children. I mean, you need to take concrete measures to resolve this and say that 10th board is not really important, or whatever decision you have to take. But to say that you deep breathe, do yoga, do relaxation, do make a timetable, how are these things going to work? If important decisions which are going to de-stress students need to be taken at the level of the state, then, or whatever the examining bodies are, then they need to do that. They can't pile on to children and say that you would keep deep breathing irrespective of what's happening around you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So, hi Abha, can you hear me?
I have to leave.
Sure, Disha, sure. Thank you so much for taking your time for this. Thank you. It was a real pleasure having with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks
Wonderful.
for providing
Thank
the
you.
platform to discuss all of this.
Thank you.
Abha, you were in the middle of saying something. I think we lost you. Do you want to complete your point?
I don't know. I mean, I hope so. The net is so bad today. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how much I've been able to, if people have been able to hear, but it's fine. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abha. Okay. There's another question from Jigisha. This is in relation to the conversation around the unions and associations by teachers and non-teaching staff. My question is to Abha and Swati. This might be a rhetorical question given the current situation, but just to ask, do we have any tools as teachers and stakeholders in various higher educational institutions to have a dialogue at the policy level in the recent future?
DUTA has already given its reaction on this whole online teaching. And, I also collected data from my students. I've shown it. And my students very clearly said that they are not ready for exams right now. And on the online teaching also, while teachers are tabulating and teachers are saying their bit, I think it is very important that students
Not able to listen.
while teacher organizations are saying their bit, teachers are saying they are writing about their discomforts, their experiences. I think it is very important that the student voice is heard, and student voice is also recorded, put on record. Their experiences are shared in the public domain. This is very important strategically, because with this consumerism and the way the governments have moved on education, they have placed students as central, as a consumer, and therefore it is
I think we've lost Abha again.
Yes, we keep losing her every now and then.
center
Yeah.
of the whole reform. They bring reforms which are not really reforms, but they do it in the name of the students. And therefore, it is important that student voice is brought to the forth also, that it is not left in the background, that it is put in the public domain, and the student organizations have that task ahead of them. Strategically, I think it is important to maintain a balance between how the teacher unions are speaking about these experiences and how the students also are speaking about their experience, so that we together can fight the policy assault little later, and even now reach the right conclusions as far as policies are concerned about examination, about teaching, and so on and so forth. That is very important. So role of unions is very important. Teacher unions is important. The role of student unions is equally important, and that is the work which we need strategically. That will be a more powerful thing. For example, even for online exam, while DUTA has already written even to UGC, MHRD, to Vice Chancellor, online exam is not okay. We do not have right now any online petition by students where they are saying that we are not ready for exams. Now, why this is happening? It is very important to say that there has to be petitions by That's it, Swati. You can respond to this.
Yes, I'd like to, basically take on from what Abha has already said, that it's, of course, in terms of, for instance, the Tuta tends to take the lead in these matters, and they already have. In West Bengal as well, two teachers associations, the Government Teachers Associations and the Calcutta University Teachers Association, has also explicitly taken a stand on this. The Vice Chancellor of Jadavpur University has spoken about this. So while there is awareness on the policy level, engagement on the part of staff associations on a policy level, this needs to happen from every part of the country. Secondly, we have not heard enough from school teachers, which is again a serious problem. This entire skewing of the discussion in favor of higher education is not helping us at all. Thirdly, as Abha pointed out, we have not heard enough from the student organizations. And while I've seen Bahujan student organizations and Muslim student organizations every now and then pointing about how discriminatory this is, less student organizations have in their own spaces talked about this, they've organized discussions. There has to be more. And I'm sorry to place this onus on them, but until and unless student organizations also come up and talk about the difficulties of what they're experiencing as stakeholders, we're not going to be able to amplify their voices by ourselves. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Swati. I've been informed that Abha has to leave. Yeah, so thank you so much, Abha, for taking out time for this. It was a real pleasure having you with us today. Thank you so much. Uh, we'll move on to the next question. So this question is specially for Dhananjay. So there's a question from Pawan. He says, this is a sheer fact that capitalism has monopoly over internet, as Daniel Schiller's Digital Capitalism and Robert McChesney's Digital Disconnect has highlighted, that how capitalism turned the internet against democracy. So in this context, how can we deal with surveillance capitalism's control over technology and social life? I mean, we need to first liberate internet itself from corporate control through making internet as commons.
So, Pawan, we can have long debate on it, because I don't think that in few seconds or few minutes this can be answered. But 2-3 things are there, which is important, and I think I take this. When we were talking about digital capitalism and the internet by the few players, and it's almost kind of a different mode of production. Saying, many times it happens that you engage with at not at ontological or not at the base or end level. You also intervene at level something called mediation. So at middle, when you are intervening, if that space is not captured, and that space is not used against the source of exploitation, then it would be very difficult to fight back. Uh, this is very true that the internet has to be it has to be liberated first. But till then, the agency cannot wait. Both process can go on. Agency to fight against the source of exploitation, and also the politics for the liberation of internet in a very democratic manner. So both can go together. In a way, technology can also become empowering. I disagree with Adorno or maybe Hockemeyer and I feel okay with sometimes Walter Benjamin when technology is also look at it could be a tool of democratization, and that is it. Ownership has to be challenged. Ownership has to be challenged, but both can go together. That is my answer.
Swati, anything else that you would like to add to that?
No, nothing in particular. I think Dhananjay is very appropriate here. God.
Yeah. So there's a question from Jitendra. How to encourage students from rural areas to analyze the situation and how to build critical thinking ability, since majority students do not understand English.
This is absolutely a problem because I myself have a large number of students who are not necessarily very conversant in English, are deeply uncomfortable with it. My classroom has students from backgrounds in Bengali medium schools, students whose mother tongue is either Bengali, Hindi or Santali, a couple of Nepali students as well. There are other classrooms which are even more diverse, such as classrooms in Delhi. And yes, this is a serious problem which the university, for instance, my colleagues elsewhere, the ones who have to teach in multiple languages, have been offering them reading material in various languages, because this too is a problem. For instance, as Abha pointed out earlier, that colleagues in Urdu are saying that there is simply not enough material in Urdu online available, and it's not exactly possible to generate something at such a short notice. So we are doing our best, but this linguistic divide that we are again placed with, which is also a class divide when it comes to the question of online learning, is something that we seriously have to engage with. SWAYAM has nothing but English language courses.
Absolutely. Not just English, but also, there's a lot of struggle with technology also, which students from the rural areas have to face. So there's a question, actually more of a comment from Pandurang Kalyankar. Two-way problems. Teachers have not technically updated and untrained to prepare e-contacts. Another way, students have not even through mobile. Who have mobile not have data range. Yeah. So I am problem of language of teaching, which is in English, which students are not understand. I think it's more of a comment. So there are a lot of interesting comments on the chat box. A lot of people have shared their experiences. Because we're running out of time, I can't read out all of them, but they're very interesting experiences. So we've already taken Rityusha's questions. Also, there's a question from Angeline. Do we have permission to quote the speakers outside of this meeting? I think two of our speakers have left, so we'll have to get in touch with them separately. But Swati and Dhananjay are with us, and they can respond to this.
But this will be on YouTube. So if something is on YouTube, it's public domain. You can put it.
And we don't believe in privatization of knowledge.
That's pretty well.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we've taken all of Rityusha's questions earlier. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Swati and Dhananjay. Thank you for taking your time for this. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and it was a very productive discussion today.
Thank you, everybody. I had a great time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Swati's posted some very interesting links in the chat box. So those of you who are interested can just go and check out those links. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.